Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at Unit 4, Homeworks 1 and 2 for the Mathematical Reasoning Co-Rec class. So Homework 1 just goes over how to solve for a certain variable or letter in a formula. For this first example, we're trying to solve for x. So all we need to do is we just need to divide both sides by 1,234, and that will give us x equals s over 1,234. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you type these answers into MyMathLab, you have to make sure you get the correct upper or lower case depending on what the formula uses. So in this case, this is a capital S and a lowercase x. And I guess since I have number 4 up here, we can go ahead and look at number 4. And same thing, we're going to solve for x. And the idea is we basically want to do the opposite of the order of operations. So we basically want to look and see if there's any addition or subtraction first, and we would do that. The way I look at it is I try and get rid of the stuff furthest away from x first. So this b needs to move over to the other side, so I'm going to subtract both sides by b. And when I do that, I get ax equals c minus b. We would divide both sides by a, and we get x equals c minus b over a. Now, this is one of two ways we can write this answer. The other one being that we could divide each of the numerator terms by a. So in other words, we can write this as c over a minus b over a. And in some cases, this may be more useful than the first. However, I believe for the online homework, you should be fine just leaving it in one single fraction. Looking at number 2, we can basically do the exact same thing as what we did in number 1, which is to divide that number on both sides. However, because it's a fraction, it gets a little bit messier when we do that. So what might make it a little bit more sense if I rewrite this, what might make a little bit more sense is I can kind of think of this as actually being z divided by 6. Since 1 over 6 times z is basically the same thing as just z divided by 6, so in this case I can actually multiply 6 on both sides. So we get 6 capital H equals z. For number 5, we want to solve for b, which happens to be on the top of this fraction. And in order to do that, we need to basically remove the stuff furthest away from the b and move it to the other side first. And in this case, 2 is underneath it, so we're going to move the 2 over. And we have to do the opposite of division to move the 2 over, so that means we need to multiply both sides by 2. So I'm going to take 2 times a plus b over 2 and set that equal to a. And so if I multiply the left side by 2, I actually need to multiply the right side by 2 as well. And this will allow the 2's to cancel on the left side. So when we do that, we get a plus b equals 2 capital A. The a's are different in this case because one's lowercase, one's upper. And we just need to subtract lowercase a on both sides. So we get lowercase b equals 2 times capital A minus lowercase a. For number 3, we're just solving for x. So to solve for x, we need to essentially divide both sides by 3. And we get 2y over 3 equals x. For number 6, notice we actually don't have to get r completely by itself. We can actually leave the answer as r squared. So all we're doing is we're just going to divide both sides by pi. So we have a over pi equals r squared. And since that's all we're trying to get by itself, we have our answer. For Unit 4 Homework 2, for the Mathematical Reasoning Co-Rec class, these are just kind of the steps that the intermediate college algebra book recommends that you follow in order to solve the story type problems. For the first problem, it says the perimeter of an NBA basketball court is 288 feet. The length of the court is 44 feet longer than the width. So first of all, what is the perimeter? Well, if we think of it as length and width, so let's say that this is the length and that this is the width, well, the perimeter is simply just adding up all 4 sides of the rectangle, or it's the outermost length if you were to run on the outer side of the basketball court. So the parameter is just adding length plus width plus the other length plus the other width. And of course, we can simplify this down to 2 lengths plus 2 widths. Well, as of now, we don't really have a whole lot more to work with except for the second sentence here, which says the length is 44 feet longer than the width. Now, remember from a while back when we did percentages, we said that if the word is used, that means that it's going to be equals. So it's saying the length equals 44 feet longer or more than the width. So that means that we're going to add 44 to the width. So what we have so far is we have our two equations. And from this, we should be able to get our answer. Well, I noticed that we can actually substitute this 44 plus w in for this length here. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically going to rewrite this parameter equation. So instead of using L, I'm going to replace L with 44 plus w. And from here, I'm going to simplify this and see if I can solve for the width. Now, one more thing I didn't do is we also know what the parameter is. The parameter is 288 feet. So now we actually have this equation down to just one variable, w, and we should be able to figure that out. So I'm going to distribute the 2 to both parts. So we have 88 plus 2w, and then we'll need to add that plus another 2w. So we have 288 equals 88 plus 4w. We can subtract 88 on both sides. So we get 200 equals 4w. And running out of room here, we have w, if I was to divide both sides by 4, I have w equals 50. So moving to the left side, we have w equals 50. How do we figure out the length? Well, we know the length is 44 plus the width, and our width is 50. So 44 plus 50 equals 94. So our dimensions is the basketball court is 94 by 50 feet. So in this example, we're trying to find the sum of two consecutive numbers. So if I was to count consecutive numbers, I would just be basically counting up by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also think of as like 302, 303, 304. So if I was to add two numbers, that gives me 347. And that they're consecutive, that means that if I was to pick x for one of them, that means the other number must be either one less or one greater than that number. Now, it doesn't really matter which way I do this. For the simplicity, I'm just going to take x plus 1. So x plus 1 is the larger number, and x is the smaller consecutive number. So from here, I can go ahead and simplify this. So we get 2x plus 1 equals 347. Subtract 1 on both sides. And we get 2x equals 346. Divide both sides by 2. And we have x equals 173. Now again, this is the smaller number. So if I was to find the bigger number, x plus 1, this would give me 174, because I just take the previous number and I add 1 to it. So those are my two consecutive numbers. Now, there's a number of ways of actually solving this particular problem. Knowing that the two numbers are consecutive and they add to 347, you could take 347 divided by 2, that'd give you 173.5. And then you know that, well, one must be larger than 173.5, the other one must be smaller. So there's multiple ways of actually solving this problem, and that's actually true for most of these story problems. So in this example, we're going to look at how to figure out how many miles that Mike can use this van rental service. So they have a daily rate of $89.95 plus 45 cents per mile. So in this case, we have to be a little bit careful on what our variables are. I would say that the cost of this rental service, we're going to just call that C. And I think in this case, we're trying to figure out how many miles. So we're going to let X be the number of miles. We're also saying that if the cost or his budget is $250, we can basically plug that in for C. So we have $250 equals $89.95 plus 0.45x. And we're going to solve for x to give us the number of miles that Mike can drive this rental van. So to solve for x, or to get x by itself, we need to get rid of $89.95 first. So we're going to subtract $89.95. 250 minus $89.95 is $160.05. So we have 160.05 equals 0.45x. And from here, 0.45 is in front of x, meaning that it is multiplying. So to do the opposite of multiplying, we need to divide 0.45 on both sides. Using a calculator, I get that x is equal to 355.67 miles. Now, of course, I did round this to 2 decimal places. The 6 is actually repeating in this example. So Mike can actually drive this for about 355 miles before running out of money in his budget. In this example, we're going to look at triangles. And I'll say that, in my opinion, the triangles are probably the hardest problems to do on my math lab for this homework. Well, the idea is we're trying to figure out how large these angles are. And they label these angles as first, second, and third. So I'm just going to kind of label them as first, second, and third. So we know that the second is 35 degrees greater or more than the first angle. The third angle is 15 degrees less than 2 times the angle of the first. So this one's maybe a little bit harder to understand what it's saying here. So if it says 15 less, that means that we need to first figure out what this 2 times the angle is, and then subtract that by 15. So 2 times the angle of the first, or 2 times first angle. And then it says 15 less than that, so we're going to take that minus 15. In this case, we have 3 unknowns. We have first, second, and third. Those are our 3 variables in this case. Even though I didn't really use letters to represent them as variables, we have 3 unknowns. And this usually means that we have to have at least 3 equations in order to solve this. So the equation that this problem doesn't specify, I think they might in my math lab if you click on help me solve this, if it's there. But what you may need is the fact that if you take the first plus the second angle plus the third angle, and this is true for every triangle, adding up all 3 angles will give you 180 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the formula for the second angle and plug that in here. And we're going to take the formula for the third angle and plug that in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and just label the first angle as x, just kind of make this look a little bit more familiar to us rather than using first, second, and third. So I'm going to replace first with x. So I'm just moving stuff over a little bit so I have more room to write stuff. So we have the first, which is my x, plus my second is 35 plus first, which I'm again replacing with x. Now I have my third, which is 2 times x minus 15. And this is, again, all equal to 180 degrees. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms. So we have x plus 2x, so that gives me 4x. 35 minus 15 is 20x, just 20. And this is equal to 180. Subtract 20 on both sides. We have 4x equals 160. I can divide both sides by 4. And end up with x, or the first angle, equaling 40. So I know that this angle here equals 40 degrees. From here I can solve for the other angles. So if I take 35 plus 40. I'll end up with 75. And our third angle is going to be 2 times our first angle, which was 40 degrees, minus 15. So 2 times 40 is 80, minus 15, and this gives us 65 degrees. Now, of course, this triangle is not drawn to scale in any way, shape, or form. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's not going to look exactly like this for the picture, but those are our 3 angles. So in this example, we're looking at interest rates again. However, we're just looking at the simple interest. A equals P times 1 plus R. And now this would typically be times, in this case, we're only looking at it for 1 year. Plugging in what they give us, we have 6,955 equals P times 1 plus 0.07. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve for the original investment, which was P. So we have 6,955 equals P times 1.07. And basically, we're just going to divide both sides by 1.07. This gives us our original investment of P equals $6,500. The last example should look familiar. We did an example like this back in percentages. With this example, Nikki left a 20% tip for a meal. The total cost of the meal, including the tip, was $24.90. The question is asking what was the cost of the meal before the tip was added, and then how much was the tip. Well, if we take the meal plus the tip, this is equal to the total. And the tip really is just some percentage times the meal. So what this actually ends up meaning is that if we have the meal plus 20% tip, so that's 0.20 times the meal, this is equal to our total, which, including the tip, was $24.90. Simplifying the left side, we have 1.20, because if we had one meal plus 0.2 of a meal, we have 1.2 meals, equals $24.90. And the last step, of course, is just dividing the 1.2 on both sides. And this gives us our meal of $20.75. So now, how much was the tip? Well, if we look at the first equation, we actually know the meal and the total. So if we subtract those, we should be able to get the tip. So if I take $24.90 minus 20.75, that should give me my tip of $4.15. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.